I'd like to welcome you to BCC Distribution's presentation on Transcend, BCCD's newest software designed for mobility and barcoding with SAP BTP for warehousing and inventory control. Today's presentation is expected to be an hour long with the Q&A near the end of the hour. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can send them over either via chat or via Q&A. But because we have a lot of great information to get to today, we are going to go ahead and start this presentation on time. And with that said, I'm going to send it over to Nick Doss. Nick, the floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. So we're recording and good to go? Okay, perfect. So for everyone's benefit, just to understand who we have from the BCC distribution side that's a part of the meeting, I think it's important for the question and answer session is we've got technical expertise, equipment expertise, et cetera. So myself, Nick Doss with BCC Distribution, got Lisa Fritz, who was just speaking. She's our equipment specialist. We got John Newman, president of BCC. We've also got Donna Albritton, our senior software engineer from an SAP and mobility standpoint. And then we've got Ryan Newman, our solution architect specific to our BTP solution. So we've got quite a wealth of expertise and knowledge if you do have any questions. But as Lisa mentioned, today's goal is to focus on our state-of-the-art native SAP RF Mobility online store and forward solution. It is our latest version of TrainASAP. This is native SAP methodology, and it's important for me to touch on this for a minute before I move on to the next slide. Native SAP methodology to BCC Distribution, how we built our TrainASAP family of products, is based upon direct connectivity. It is part of SAP. There's no third-party middleware. Our goal is to accomplish what SAP has been evangelizing at Sapphire this year and for a couple of years, which is a clean core objective, and for SAP system simplification. So having a barcode scanning system that's simple, having it scalable so you can add on functionality, have it sustainable so you can maintain it, and then be able to upgrade it with your SAP system. And then also one of the biggest ROI points is to get immediate data validation. So when I scan a barcode, I validate that information. So this is a store and forward focused solution that we're going to talk about, we're going to dive into. But before we get into the actual product, we just want to take a minute for those who are not too familiar with BCC Distribution. Let John give a little introduction about who we are and what we do for 2 slides, and then I'll take the reins back, John.
Thank you, Nick. While we're waiting for other people to jump on board, we figured we'd go through the boring stuff. But the question is, how did we get to where we are, which is leading and bleeding edge technology within SAP and barcode scanning? So we actually started this company before 2000, so over 25 years, and we have taken it from an equipment-centric company, equipment meaning barcode printers, barcode scanners. There was a company called Symbol Technologies back in the day that we helped them from being a retail provider to a manufacturer and a distribution specialist company, and we are still a certified partner of theirs. As we moved through the equipment side, we then got into the software side. And about 15 years ago, we became certified and a partner of SAP. All of our software products back in the day up through now are and have been certified with SAP along with Zebra Technologies, along with Honeywell, and along with Bartender. We take that very serious, and our partners take that very serious as well. So we are certified by our partners, and we have become very, very knowledgeable with the SAP data collection and printing solutions. So we started off, like many of the companies on this call, with Telnet, which back in the day, which is still very usable, is Console. And along with Georgia Softworks, you can have a online only real-time solution between mobile devices and printers and SAP. And that is what we call our TrainASAP product. And we took our TrainASAP product and then we moved it to ITS Mobile, which again is online real-time only. But as we went through that, we started getting a lot of feedback, which is we need offline. We need to be able to utilize SAP connectivity and software when we are not where the Wi-Fi is. And so we came up with Transcend. QuickPrint is our printing solution, and we've also recently come up with Tran RFID. And keep looking at your emails in the next couple of months, because you'll be seeing another presentation on our RFID solution here in the next 3-4 months. So besides the software, as I mentioned, we sell, we support, we train, we maintain all of the equipment from Honeywell, from Zebra, as well as some other devices and companies, and all the services that we need to be able to do a solution. Again, from analysis, consulting, and training, wireless, labeling, printing, RFID, consulting. We have all those professional services. Our team is all over the U.S., so we support U.S. and overseas quite extensively. And then we support. We sell all the maintenance for the equipment, and we also sell all support and maintenance for all of our software. And so that's how we got here. We kept following the train. We kept following the needs and the requirements of our SAP users, and now we're to a brand new world with SAP and their BTP solution. Nick, please.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate that little background. Again, just to familiarize everybody with the different pieces of the puzzle. We're going to be very software focused, functionality focused today. So again, going back to our message for today, what are we talking about? The who, what, when, where, why, how kind of stuff. So our focus is this latest iteration, as John mentioned, going from just a real time to a solution that has online capability, store and forward capability, batch mode, or offline capability. So let me talk a little bit about this. Store and forward is extremely interesting because there's been a lot of different iterations, and we're going to talk about the versions in just a second. But some of the focus for store and forward, which is that center blue section, is really the highlight for our conversation. It's built specifically for online and offline use. The way we build it at BCC Distribution through a lot of research and development is that we've designed it as an online first solution. So we validate as best as possible through cellular, through Wi-Fi, and then when we lose the connectivity, then we go to an offline mode. And that's to achieve an inventory control best practice, which is slightly contrary to what a standard SAP type solution might offer. Also, our goal is to automatically synchronize data while we're performing functions. So we're performing the transactions, we're immediately validating, and then we're also synchronizing to make sure that when we do go offline, should we go offline, that our data is as fresh and as updated as possible. So I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit. I'm going to get back to demonstrating the software and talking about it more specifically, but some of the use case scenarios, they're all over the map. Today in the modern world, people are really we've got Wi-Fi inside the four walls, but a lot of people really don't have inside the four walls applications for inventory control and traceability. Field operations is very prominent for transportation and logistics, proof of delivery. I'm delivering some cabinets and dropping them off per se, and I actually don't have Wi-Fi or cellular capability, so I need to collect the data, maybe take a picture, maybe do a signature capture, and then synchronize that data automatically, or when I drop it into a cradle when I come back. Same thing for a dairy application, a chemical type application where it's a large campus. I potentially can't have Wi-Fi because of intrinsically safe requirements. Or maybe it's government-based, like a military installation, where I physically cannot have connectivity because of the limitations for internet connectivity for security purposes. So there are a plethora of applications, and sorry for the very busy screen, but wood yards, plant maintenance, MRO, it really kind of spans the industry and vertical markets of how you might actually use this, just having this capability. So when we go outside the four walls, we take that very seriously as far as what it might do. So this is kind of a quick history. John mentioned it before about the console, the telnet, which is on the far left, still used today, still supported with S4, but it also has something interesting which ITS Mobile doesn't have, which is session persistence. So some people want and still use console because of legacy equipment or legacy SAP system, legacy environment version. but they also have the ability to hold their login information if they drop the connection and reestablish it. So that's a value to some people. That is a unique feature of our new BTP solution as well. Then there's the ITS Mobile that's kind of in the middle to the left. Then the UI5 Fiori design that's third from the left. And then ultimately the BTP solution, which we're describing today. A quick note about the actual UI5 Fiori approach. So we investigated and did a lot of R&D for that approach as well, but there's some factors that just were not convenient for some of our clients. And the long-term approach necessarily wasn't ideal. The speed of the RF scanning capabilities, the fragility of the actual system due to Google updates and the actual web view interface. So not necessarily ideal, and it wasn't an offline built by design. It was an added functionality, whereas the BTP solution, it's going to that future-proof approach that we're trying to look for. So this is the architecture of this BTP Store and Forward Transcend solution that we're talking about today. So I'd like to categorize this probably even a little bit better, but on the right side with the actual Zebra device, you've got the device. In the middle, you've got the BTP or the Business Technology Platform section. And on the left, you've got your local client network application business site facility. You've got your SAP system, whether it's hosted or on-prem or even a public cloud iteration. You've got your printers, you've got your actual cloud connector, you've got your wireless network, or maybe using Cellular for the whole thing. But left is SAP, middle is the actual BTP, and on the right is the device itself. The device is a Zebra device, rugged device. There's certain parameters, we'll talk about those in a little while, but we set this device up with the actual Transcend MDK mobile client native Android application. That connects through to BTP, again, through wireless. So it could be 5G, it could be 4G, it's cellular connection. If we prefer to use Wi-Fi, if it's Wi-Fi 6 enabled device, then we can utilize that level of 802.11 connectivity. Or if it's batch cradle, we'll showcase that more in a minute. But we're connecting to BTP. We're utilizing our Transcend software setup using SAP's mobile services and Cloud Foundry. And we'll talk about those two pieces specifically in a minute, but those are part of the BTP system. And then that connects through Cloud Connector on your client network where your SAP system is running. So that is the actual SAP transactions that we're using. So this is a little bit about the architecture. We have a separate presentation that talks about this extensively, but we can certainly talk about that more at a later time. But store and forward connectivity, just Nick, how does it work? Very simplistic. We tried to lay it out in a way that you could visualize, if you will. But on the top section, I'm online, and this is the majority of how I want to operate. I have a cellular connection or I have a Wi-Fi connection. My application on my device through BTP is talking to the SAP system and bidirectionally communicating. It's validating information, it's updating information, it's updating my database, and all things are good. I'm connected and I'm working in as close to real time as I could possibly get. And then in the middle, if I break that connection, now my ABK is talking locally on my handheld device's memory to my database, and I am performing those transactions, or I'm saving that information I'm collecting, or I'm holding that session until I reestablish connection. Once I reestablish, then I synchronize my information. I am now back online, and I continue as I was before. This is the kind of the online primary first approach to how we actually interface a store and forward solution. Now at the end section, and I apologize for talking fast here, but at the end section, once we reestablish a connection, there's a couple of different ways that we can tackle synchronizing that data. Our best approach is to do that automatically. If we want to have that as a manual trigger to have some user interaction, so we don't start synchronizing while we're in the middle of a function, we can do that. It all comes down to our mobile device design and architecture that you need specifically, but there's lots of different ways to approach that. For the security applications or the government applications or situations where we just are going to do field maintenance or plant operations or MRO, and we're just not going to have any kind of connectivity, we're going to have our user have a device, we're going to drop it in a cradle, we're going to synchronize everything in the device, and then we're going to use it for the day, we're going to come home and we're going to resynchronize. So this is that batch offline approach. Again, this is the beauty of this BTP architecture that we have for Transcend is it allows all of these different techniques for how we connect. It's basically, it was really ultimately driven by how your business operates and how you're reconciling inventory control and traceability. But this, again, is synchronizing through a cradle directly to the system. I pull it out, I use it, I perform my transactions, I cache the amount of data that I need specific to that user and the functions that they're doing. And then when I'm done, I drop it back in the cradle. And again, it can be automatic or it can be triggered by the user or by the system to reestablish and resynchronize the information. Donna or Ryan, anything that I've missed that you wanted to touch on regarding the store and forward screen that I had before this or the batch that I have right now?
You're doing great, Nick.
Okay.
I've no further comments.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that being said, one of the things that I kind of went over really quickly when I showed the architecture slide was the SAP module use. Well, we use IM, we use WM, we use EWM. It doesn't matter. BCC distribution is a library of 350 plus transactions that we've built for our prior versions from the TrainASAP family. I'm going to talk about that migration and roadmap path a little bit more in the future, or actually a little later in the presentation. But right now, we're going to show you an example of an IM transaction, a WM transaction, an EWM transaction. So hopefully we get a little something for everybody. So we'll start with this one. So I'm going to hit play. And what we're going to see with this transaction is this is inventory management. This is a stock overview or an inventory inquiry. But you're going to see the login. The login is very different than a different ITS mobile console type connection. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But this is an inquiry that can be done by two different methods. It can be done by storage location. So we can actually search our storage location to see all the materials in that S-log, or we can actually enter the material and then see all those storage locations where that material resides. Also, you may have seen it, but if you see the top icon, it's red. So we are forcing the device basically to go offline. So you can see that it was synchronized. We disconnected, and now we're doing an inquiry based on the data that we last had when we updated the system. So you can see in this case, we've entered the storage location, and then we're seeing the total quantity of materials, unrestricted, blocked, in that specific bin or in that specific storage location. And again, this is running in an offline mode. What it's also going to do is it's going to back out, and we're going to re-input some data, which can be manually entered, or it can be scanned by scanning the storage location or scanning the bin in WM if it's a bin inquiry. But in this case, we're seeing all the different locations and the stock of materials in that storage location. What it's also going to do is it's going to go back and then it's going to show us a reconnection to the system. But in this case, what we would see is, we're going to reconnect and we're connecting to a 5G network. You see the icon at the top that's gone green. That means we reconnected. And now it didn't happen here because we did it so quickly. But if there was data to be synchronized, then you'd see a little spinning circle, and then it would refresh the data. So that way you had the accurate inventory information for the S-log. And right here, I wish I could pause. I can't pause it, but you see the menu. So we take the same approach for our menu that we do with our prior versions of our TrainASAP family of products, where you have all the applications in this case are accessible from a traditional RF menu. Again, we'll showcase that more in just a minute. Ryan or Donna, anything you want to mention about this transaction? I went really quickly. Okay. All right, so the next one we'll show is we're going to show one more IM transaction. The inquiry is very good, but we want to see something a little different. We always like to see, in addition to IM, WM, and EWM, we're going to show an in and out, and then we're going to show the inquiry, which we just did. So this one is more of our out type transaction. So this is a goods issue. So this transaction, before I start it, is based on we're issuing materials to a work order, and it's planned materials versus, options for a goods issue to a cost center or project or reservation, or for potentially issuing out unplanned material. But what you'll notice in this transaction when I get it started is that we'll also see serial number capture, because in the material master data, the material that we're actually issuing out is serial number managed. So it tells us that we have to enter that serial number. So let's walk through this transaction. Oh, this real quick, this is interesting because this one is operating in an offline primary mode. So this one actually allows us to push updates manually from that top right icon. But with that being said, we enter a work order. We scanned it in this case, which is a feature that BCC distribution has enabled for BTP specifically to leverage the scanning capability of these advanced data capture devices. So now we need to enter the material. We actually pulled up the list of the materials that are planned for this work order. We select the material we need, and now we have to enter the quantity, and that'll be our next step. So we enter a quantity. Again, you can see the physical keys on the scanner or the virtual keys on the keypad. Now this prompts us for the serial number. And what we do is we have to physically enter the serial number. Hopefully we have a barcode like we do in this case. So we scan that serial number and then it captures it. But because we entered a quantity of 2, we have to enter the serial number for both materials. So we scan the second one and then we post that information back to the work order. Again, from here, realistically, in the real world, we can go back and issue additional parts if we're working at a storeroom, or we could potentially add in some unplanned parts if we didn't have that, if we didn't have a part on the work order that we previously defined, but we need it because sometimes that's the case. And I think it's going to keep going through and just, it's going to issue out some additional parts. But again, you can see it's just kind of, it's still the same approach that we have with our TrainASAP product. Transcend is a top-down approach. So what we're doing ultimately is we're taking one piece of information, we're prompting the user, and then we're validating that piece of information. If it's good, then it proceeds forward. If there's an error, then we're giving them immediate feedback through an audible tone and a user prompt on the screen to tell them if they're doing something wrong. Again, the goal is to go for accuracy. So those are two IM transactions. The next one we're going to showcase, again, we're trying to show different devices as well. For WM applications, we're showing a bin-to-bin material movement. So this one illustrates a few things. It's an LTL1 transaction. It's a mobile RF transaction. This is not a standard SAP transaction. This is a BCC distribution optimized transaction. And what that means and what you'll see here is that we combine functions. In addition to doing a bin-to-bin, we might do an inventory inquiry. So we tie in an inquiry, so advanced automation. We might need to do a label print. So we add that in, and then we get rid of certain functions that we don't need, and we just enable what we do need to accomplish the tasks. So let's play this transaction. And you can see how the application is actually launched from the start. It skips past our menu in this case just to keep it simple and quick. But this is our PIN that we have for different users, which has our full SAP credentials in an encrypted token. I'll talk about that more in a slide that's coming up. But we scan or enter our source bin, we scan or enter the material, and then we enter the quantity of materials that we're moving. In this case, it's very unique. This is a bin that has multiple materials in the bin, so we can actually have this transaction allow us to physically move materials and match that up with the actual system update for the materials that we're moving. So you can see we entered the quantity, the materials, a transfer order was created and confirmed. Now we'll go through it one more time. And what happens a lot of times with these transactions is they might do something wrong. So you can see there's a quantity of 50 available, we'll enter 51, and you can see an error. It does not let us proceed. We don't wait until the transaction's done to validate information. We validate it as soon as possible to catch those errors immediately, so we don't have to go back and find out where the error was made. So we wanted to highlight that so you could see an example of what the transaction does when you do something wrong. All right, so that's our bin-to-bin. Last one we'll show here is a goods receipt. This is a goods receipt for inbound delivery, and it supports utilization of handling units specifically for EWM. EWM transactions are very different from WM. This is a SCWMPRDI, or a product inbound delivery transaction. It illustrates the consumption of raw materials like packaging supplies, like corrugated or packing materials, as well as the material inventory that we're physically receiving. So let me start this transaction, which is running on a Honeywell device, just to give us a flavor for a different type of technology. So first thing we do is we have to scan or enter the delivery number. Ideally, we would want to scan this, but sometimes those delivery numbers don't actually have a barcode, so we have to enter them. We are selecting from a list, in this case, the packaging materials that we're actually going to apply to prepare this handling unit. Then we're going to select or enter the material. In this case, we've got multiple materials that are tied to this delivery. So we select that material, and then we select the quantity that we're receiving. In this case, I think we're going to receive 1. If we want to receive all of them, we could do that as well. And then we save that information once the receipt is complete. And then our handling unit is created. Our goods receipt is posted for this specific delivery item. What's missing from this equation? Again, real world for your warehouse application. When you receive materials, what you're ultimately going to do is, if it doesn't already have a barcode label, you want to generate a label. Excuse me. So we don't showcase the actual label printing as a part of this transaction, but that might be an option that's best for your application. Additionally, this more showcases a one-step transaction where we just receive it potentially to staging. There might be a second step we need to immediately flow into, like a put away or a bin movement. That might be a transaction that we automate and tie to this function for real world use as well. Again, just some additional options that you might see. Ryan or Donna, anything you want to add about the WM transaction or this EWM transaction before I move on?
Yeah, I'll just mention, obviously we're going through a lot of these examples here, but I don't know if we have one in here or if Nick's going to show it later. But not only does the online and the offline icon in the top corner, we've been seeing a lot of green and reds, but it also takes into account a blue icon for cellular if it were to be a cellular device, and that comes out of the box with it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm going to skip ahead, Ryan, just because you mentioned it, and I'm going to come back. So some of the highlights that I talked about, but it went really quick and maybe you missed it. This is just what Ryan was talking about. So again, the goal for what we're trying to accomplish here is ease of user training. It's simplicity. It's intuitiveness of the transactions. We're not trying to use full amounts of SAP data and train people on how to actually use SAP extensively. These are material handlers, potentially summer workers or high turnover people, so it needs to actually be as efficient as possible. So this is an example of that icon identification. So if we are using cellular, then we have that icon at the top as you see on the screen. If we're using Wi-Fi and we're connected, then we have a green version. If we're offline because we lost our wireless or we lost our cellular connection, then we have that red icon. Those are a couple of examples. So I'm going to back up to showcase a couple of other examples. So this was a question I got the other day. Well, I see that you have this single sign-on type approach. So this one specifically isn't single sign-on necessarily. This is when SAP, you log on for the first time for the device, it makes you enter your full credentials, your email and your password. But for a lot of people, doing that every day on an RF scanner is very tedious, especially if the device logs out automatically and they have to redo it again because some people have long emails. What this solution enables, it assigns an encrypted PIN to hold your actual login credentials, both on the device and on the BTP layer. So that way, when we log back in the device, we only have to throw in our PIN, which is what people are used to with their phones. But the question I got this week was, hey, Nick, what happens if we share this device between multiple users? Well, you'll see that on the right, you'll see it circled in red. There's switch or add user. We just toggle between users and then pop another user on, select the user, enter the PIN, and then you're off and running. If you haven't used the device before, you have to put in your full credentials, assign a PIN, and then you're good to go. So it's a really nice feature that comes with this BTP technology that allows us to more quickly and easily log onto the device over and over and over again because we use them every day ultimately. Additionally, I touched on it before, but because of the BTP approach to building applications that are actually running these transactions for receiving, for issuing, for picking, for counting, etc., instead of having to open up your device and to launch all these different applications from a home screen or keep them in a folder, we have built this model to be able to allow you to run from the menu by launching a single application, which is very unique to BCC distribution. So this is what people are used to with RF technology, and this is the way we built it to combine the applications, to maintain a responsive screen, and to be user-driven based upon your SAP credentials when you log in. So you see what you have access to. And by the way, I said responsive screen. If you don't know what that means, so what you see on these two devices is you'll see a PDA and then a traditional scanner. The screen sizes are different. I think, Lisa, what are they, like a 6-inch and a 4-inch? Yeah, 6 and a 4-inch. So our application responsively and automatically adjusts the screen size to use the full screen. We don't have to proportion it to 95% or 100 or 110% anymore to make sure we use all the screen size. It's automatic. Some of the other notes, the last screen I have for this to talk about the actual highlights of the solution is the connectivity. So we talked about cellular use. We've mentioned that multiple times. So that is based upon you having a device that has the chipset that actually supports cellular connectivity. If we just have a device that's only equipped for Wi-Fi, then obviously we're limited to Wi-Fi capability. Additionally, for modern devices, for BTP and for this APK connectivity, we recommend that we have a device with an Android operating system of 12 plus, or a chipset that actually supports upgrading to that level. But we also have applications we're running this on Android 10 and as well as Android 8. Donna, is that correct? We are running this in Android 10 as well?
Yes, we have that on 8, 10, and I believe maybe 11 as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right, so actually, Donna, if you'll stay nearby, you and Ryan. So we want to give everybody a little bit more about what's happening behind the scenes. So these are all the components that make up the solution. We had that architecture slide a little while ago, but this is important because this actually highlights the different sections of what's actually being used. So we'll start from the bottom and work our way up, because the bottom is the end user. This is the device in hand. What do we see? Well, we have a device, as I mentioned before, that's properly staged and configured by BCC. We want to use a certified device. We want to make sure that Casey and our staging team has properly loaded that, put on our security parameters, activated cellular service if necessary, and then lock down all the stuff we don't need. But we've got the device at the bottom. We've got our database built for how we're actually going to use the offline functionality, short and long term. And then we've got our connectivity. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about the internet connection and what the cellular and the branded settings means? Sorry, you might be on Wi-Fi still. Or sorry, Wi-Fi mute. Say Wi-Fi so much.
Yeah. No, you're fine. I was on mute. So yeah, the one thing that does add an encrypted connection through BTP, and this is the whole BTP connection from the MDK, the Android application, through Cloud Connector into the home system, is something called branded settings. So this is what's initially set up on the device, and when you're actually creating the BTP MDK application itself, even before code is loaded onto the device, you still need to kind of get the framework onto the device, and part of that is the branded settings. And that's once you set up the mobile services, once you create your service that you want to all of your transactions, your application to go through. Once that's done, then you put the branded settings on the device, and then that's going to be, I apologize, what connects the device from the network connection into mobile services.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, so as you can see, you've got the connection, and then you've got the business technology platform, BTP. You've got two icons in the actual green section with BTP that have pins on them. That is the Cloud Foundry runtime, and you've got SAP mobile services. These are part of the BTP piece that actually require additional services, and I got a screen dedicated to that just a minute that I'm going to showcase. But the application that we built, our Transcend solution, is based upon utilization of this technology, as well as being deployed through Business Application Studio. Ultimately, it connects to your SAP system, your OData services, your database that you have, and your gateway for your SAP. And this works, Ryan, this is for S/4HANA as well as ECC applications are supported, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Donna or Ryan, anything you want to add before I move on to the next slide?
I'm fine so far.
All right. So I'm not going to read all these words, but I just wanted to have it here from a technical standpoint for those who wanted to know more information. I can share this and we can go back and reference it later. But regarding, you mentioned it and I skimmed over it a little bit, but this MDK architecture, there's a little bit more to this as to why we took this approach, but the goal again is for stability and it's for a low code approach for ease of use for growing your system. So if we want to add additional transactions, additional applications, additional functions to our system, this allows us to do so easily. It also allows us to sustain and support the system long term. If you want to know about Cloud Connector, that is a component that's a part of the system. It's on your SAP side that allows us to interface from BTP and the device to SAP. And then the BTP, many people on the call today, I know actually have BTP, so they're familiar with the commercial models of utilization for their consumption-based BTP licensing, or their agreements rather, but there are several options available. And then Cloud Foundry is another component that has information available. So we have these and we share the presentation and you can check out the links to learn more, but we just wanted to have a quick note about that. But for those who are not familiar or haven't leveraged mobile services with BTP yet because you're using BTP for other things, these are the additional components that we'll need to add in order to support this Transcend BTP mobility solution. So one of them is the Cloud Foundry runtime, and this is really based upon the amount of data or memory that we're going to be utilizing within the actual BTP system. And then mobile services is the other component. This is just specific to our resources that we're going to be using, AKA our users, how many people we're going to have. And it's easily defined within BTP as to actually how many we're going to do. If we have sub 25, it's just flat. If we have 50, 500, 100, 500, et cetera, then it has increments that can be defined very simplistically. But we can understand exactly what it would take to get this up and running. And Don and Ryan, not to overcomplicate this, but from a device standpoint, I'm going to back up a slide or two here. But from an architecture standpoint, BCC distribution, like we do with our other real-time ITS mobile console-based systems, as well as our UI5 solution, we implement the full solution. So the customer is not going to have to know how to put SAP mobile services in place, how to set up Cloud Foundry, and how to set up the branded settings for the device. When we implement the solution, we can implement a turnkey to include the services for BTP. Is that correct?
It is. Donna, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the customer would need to do the installation of the Cloud Foundry. We wouldn't do installations of the pieces, but we can definitely do all the configuration turnkey.
Perfect. Thanks for clarification. That might have been the question, and I just want to try to catch that immediately. So we're getting close to the end of our presentation here, but I think we have like two or three slides left. But for those who are familiar with our TrainASAP products, you've got, the library of 350 now transactions. So to give you an understanding of where our product roadmap is, there's a couple of points I wanted to make in addition to showing you this graphic on the screen here. So just to be clear, the Transcend solution is immediately available. We debuted this, or we did the R&D in 2023. We launched this, debuted it as Sapphire in June this year. And we are actually actively working to migrate the certification for our real-time solution to the Transcend store and forward solution as soon as possible. So we're working with SAP to accomplish that. What's more important probably for the people in this call is that we're also working with active efforts as of today, or actually this week recently, to validate the solution itself with end-user feasibility. We're putting it out actually into a test environment, which is probably one of the toughest conditions. The SAP environment is complex, the business process is complex, and they're leveraging all the features that we've talked about today. really to try to capitalize on the ROI of this store and forward, the login capabilities, and the ability to cache the data. So we are going through multiple steps to make sure that not only does the solution work, not only is the solution stable and sustainable, but that also that it meets the ROI objectives to make sure that what we're doing this for, which is going from a manual or a legacy barcode data collection system up to a modern solution, still has the same ROI to achieve what we need to achieve. And then one of the questions, again, we might get it proactively, but I just wanted to touch on this real quick. Because we've really focused on the software aspect and the connectivity, it's an agnostic solution. So there are many different devices available. This is where Lisa would come into the conversation and really showcase, hey, do we want to use this on a traditional scanner, a PDA type device, a vehicle mounted terminal, or something else? Yes, it does support all these different form factors and various devices. And ultimately, it comes down to where we start every project is with a gap analysis and blueprint. We take the functionality that we have today, we take the business process that you need or the system that you're using today, and then we do a gap analysis to make sure that we design the solution to match your specific business requirements. We deliver a blueprint with an SOW, no matter if it's one transaction, migrating some transactions and functionality, or implementing a new system from the ground up.